Hear me out. I know that witches may fall under the goddess category, but for organizational purposes, I'm gonna make a whole nother series just for witchcraft, and just so we can kind of specify, because I feel like witches really are their own category because they are a vibe, a like type of lifestyle that you kind of acquaint yourself with when you are a witch. I mean, yeah, it's just a label, but it is still a lifestyle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a whole nother series just for witches because there's a lot to cover with witchcraft, and it's actually historical. A lot of this stuff is historical fact. It's not just about the silly stuff you see in movies like Hocus Pocus and The Craft even. Like there's a lot of legitimacy, and it dives right back into alchemy, and eventually I will get back into alchemy and I will connect the dots so you understand why a witch is essentially an alchemist and why they're a goddess, blah blah blah. So bear with me. We're going to skip the reading today because I'm gonna do a reading on some other platform. Anyway, so I want to cover, I guess, the basic history of witches and the Salem trials, just because it's the most common. There obviously are all sorts of different witches. There's shamans, which are essentially a sort of type of witch, Wiccans, and all kinds of like brujas, all kinds of like. I probably said that terribly. I'm sorry, but like there's all kinds of different types of witches, and I'm going to cover the basics first and then kind of roll through some of like the observations that I want to take from like the witchcraft, because it's not just about going over the history of witches, it's actually comparing some of that wisdom and that knowledge to today and the things that we're actually going through currently, especially with COVID. And it's probably going to be triggering for a lot of people, but that's what we're here to do, is trigger some of those insecurities, and let's do some shadow work, okay? To let my cat out, or he was going to continue crying until I opened the front door for him. Even though there's a cat door in the back of the house, it's okay. Cats rule us. So, to start off with, maybe let's just go over some of the different types of witches and what witchcraft really is, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And if you're a witch and you're here watching this, you probably already have a really great idea of what they are. But it really has a lot more to do with spiritualism. Like, yeah, there's some dark witchcraft, there's blood magic, black magic, whatever. But a lot of that has to do with karma and what we associate as good or bad and wrongdoings. Like, people want to speed up the karmic process, and that's what a lot of modern day witches are all about, is about karma retention and just trying to kind of like balance out those energies, because there's no other force of nature that's going to actually go and condemn somebody for their wrongdoings. So that's like the basic consensus of what a witch does, but it's not the entirety of her complexity. It really isn't, or his. So what is a witch? What is that term? What is the most basic definition of witchcraft? What is that? This, you type this into Google and you're going to get the most basic answer available, and it's a woman thought to have magical powers, especially, they say especially evil ones. So popularly depicted wearing a black cloak, all of that jargon, and like the giant nose, and she like worships the devil or whatever. By the way, the devil worships her, very vice versa. The devil learns through her. I know these are going to be some really interesting concepts to soak up. But yeah, we're going to talk about everything, and you know, yeah, there's a lot of other different types of categories of witchcraft, and if we're really gonna get back into like ancient times, like the Anunnaki and like the Egyptians, they actually practice witchcraft. There's so many signs. I'm gonna get into that too, but not for this episode. So just tune in for that. But it's not today. I'm sorry. I love you, but we will eventually get to it. So basically, this is my definition. I'll go ahead and say my definition because it has a lot more to do with Earth. It has a lot more to do with absence of ego. Not always, but maybe not absence. Okay, so not absence, but utilizing ego as a tool, as a wisdom, as a source for her power and what she wants to manifest. Because a lot of it just goes right back into manifestations and understanding light and dark, duality aspects of light and shadow. So understanding why both are present here on earth, why they are necessary tools and constructs for humans to even exist, as well as other things and are involved in our evolution. And it's very founded on the nature of the world around us. And what I mean by that is why you see so many different witches practicing witchcraft differently, but basically on the same terms. There's herbs involved, there's crystals, there's fire elements involved, um, pheromones, and I'm trying to think of everything. Standing and singing under the moon, I do that pretty frequently. That is a very grounding method for like getting your head back on your shoulders, by the way. Just want to put that out there. If you're ever feeling like flustered, maybe you live in the city, I'm sorry if you do, but just stand under the stars and let that energy soak into you. Like, think about whatever you're trying to think about, let it flow through you, but then go stare at the stars and let it pass. I promise you, it's extremely powerful. And so, what do I mean by saying all of these things? Like the herbs, the crystals, the fire, like these are all elements of earth. Fire, water, earth, and air. I'm so glad I got that right because there was only four of them. But like, it's very important to understand the comparison in her nature to protect Earth in its natural evolution. And what that basically means is there's a lot of conflicting values in humans, and science plays a really big part of that. And I'm not gonna disenfranchise science because it is a very valuable tool, but it was actually crafted as a form of religion, a belief system. A lot of people use it as dogma these days, and they actually use it as a core foundation for their values and belief systems. Believe it or not, you could honestly consider them Scientologists if you really wanted to, but that's actually not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about modern society. I ain't talking about those weirdos who understand that mortality and reincarnation, which is actually some of the Scientologist belief systems. I don't know everything about Scientology, but that wasn't the point of what I was trying to make. Like, there's people who follow, and there are people who observe, and then there are leaders. Why are there leaders? I have no idea. But a lot of people deem themselves as leaders because they understand that their core values are more valuable than other people's. And they do this on a biased opinion of what is good and bad and what is better for mankind as a whole and entirety. And sometimes usually their intentions are not pure and have some type of agenda associated and backlegging whatever belief system they're trying to present to you. So they may tell you that they have good intentions, but they may have a lot of other things that they want to um, take into consideration when they do all of these things and teach you all of these things. So it's just something to consider because we are free willed, we are free minded, we are free thinkers here, and that is what we are given these tools and resources for, is to bring free information to people. And a lot of these values are being questioned and intimidated by world leaders, usually economic leaders, people who own these giant corporations such as Facebook, Twitter. I can name a bunch of them. I'm not, in this video, okay, I'm not trying to call out all these corporations, but I just want to compare, and I hope you can understand the observation that I'm making here. Because let's just jump right back into witchcraft. So there was this guy Hopkins, right, back in the Salem trials, and he had this list of all of these possible situations or possible scenarios, not even scenarios, it was he put these people through tests to see how they would react, and if they reacted negatively, they were deemed a witch. And at the end of all of these trials, he actually failed his own test and nothing actually happened to him. He eventually died of like natural causes or tuberculosis or something like that. There's not a whole lot of information on the past. A lot of this is always observable, so just kind of use discernment when I talk to you about this stuff because I'm still fresh. I'm still new to the Salem witchcraft trials. I haven't dug that deep into it, although I will be. There were these, so like he would prick your skin. This is just one of them. He would prick your skin, and if you reacted towards it, you were human. If you didn't react towards somebody pricking your skin, you were a witch. Of course, I'm sure there was a bunch of other things like within the test. Like you weren't just like, getting pricked and then it's like obvious or like, damn, you're condemned, you're a witch now. I'm pretty sure you had to go through a series, a trial of tests and things that actually categorized you as a witch before they hung you. Um, but he failed his own test and nothing happened to him. I don't know, it's just something to think about and consider when we're talking about today's age, when we have readily available information. Technology makes things so available for us. There's so many different things to condense, and digest because you have to categorize all this information, you have to understand it, and you have to evaluate and make your own observation and understand which is relevant and which is true in your experience of life. And it's so strange. It's so strange to even think about and consider that none of us actually have any idea or concept of what's really going on in the world around us. We're just here experiencing life and things happen around us, not to us. And that's just so crazy to think about. But yeah, that's again off topic. But there's also this other guy after the Hopkins trials. I think it got like some fame and glory or something. And some other dude, there's actually not a whole lot of maybe you can find some more information about him, but his name was The Bell. And so he basically followed along with a lot of Hopkins belief systems. And he actually made money from these trials. Like, he was actually getting contributions financially for having these trials and hosting these trials for other people. And he basically had these games and like the Hunger Games situations. I swear, it's just so weird to even conceptualize that this actually happened. But there was the appointed person who condemned the witch. The trial consisted of those two, the witch and the person who was the accuser. And was getting rich off of this stuff, right? He was making bank. He was making like 10 times the the average amount of income for persons in that day and age. And it's compare them. Just compare it to today and understand the age of information and why you as an individual have been appointed to make these observations and base your evaluations on your own consensus. So like you observe the natural world, what's going on around you, and have to understand that a lot of things that taking place are their own form of experiment, whether that be through natural nature or man-made experiments. Like when we get I guess I'll bring it up, but when we get vaccines, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm not a pro-vaxxer, I ain't either of those things, because there's a lot of science and relativity behind vaccines and vaccinations, and a lot of it usually has to do with scientific observation. People go to these labs, they don't necessarily just kind of present themselves, they are paid for these experiments, they sign up for these human experiments, and they are paid to basically give their body away or give themselves away temporarily so these scientists can make all of these conclusions based off their observations and blah blah blah. So it's just interesting to consider that some of these things may have some profit value as far as information, available information, questioning the authority and what is presented to you as valuable and facts more than anything. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Those fact checkers online, like who actually goes through and in life and is like, you know what, I'm gonna be professionally. I'm gonna be a fact checker. Like seriously. Anyway, so going into like what motive like these guys may have actually had for like trying all of these women for witchcraft. There was like 150 of these I think the trials or the murders themselves. There's like 150 of them. So yeah, it's not extremely high, but it is still pretty relative and still pretty relevant. When you consider that people were following this basis off of like religion and their belief systems. So they were condemning these other individuals because they were told by some dude that these people were bad and had ill intention with no actual representation and nobody to actually back them up. Like, they didn't have lawyers. Didn't have lawyers back then. Trials were done so differently back then, and I don't even remember. I studied a little bit of it when I was in government, but it's gone. My point is these people had motive. They were getting rich. They used these facts to spread disinformation to other people and use that motive and that indoctrination to encourage people to follow them. And it was almost like they weren't spiritual leaders, they weren't cultists, but in a lot of ways they really were. Because they got these people to believe in the same system and encouraged people to do things directly by what they like convince them to do, and it was based off of moral standing. And it's just really interesting because a lot of us today with COVID are questioning our own moral grounding and standing because of popularity. What is the consensus for truth? What is actually relative in why or how we're taking care of other people? What is actually like our core fundamental values? Like, are we actually doing this to help people, or are we doing this for our own like virtue signaling? Sorry, I'm gonna put you on blast, but yeah, virtue signaling, or are you actually in consideration of like what is going on in a society as a whole? And that is, it's so chaotic because there's so many things to think about and consider, but you have to at least at some point question your authority. And if you're not questioning your authority at some point, you are a follower of occultism. I know. You thought witches were bad. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian. I'm here to inflame you and put you on blast because that's what this channel is about. It's spiritualism, honey. It's not religion. It is observation and droning effort to change humanity for the better. What does that mean, though? I know. But my point is, when we question authority and we go through observations and we understand that those observations may also not be relative, because if you go through, like me, I'm taking statistics, right? Well, I'm not taking statistics. That's what I'm learning right now in school, and it talks a lot about like variables, how valuable some of that information actually is, and how a lot of it is just congested or condensed, not congested, condensed information used to make a more viable conclusion based off of a consensus, which, it has its fundamental value. Like, it's very important to use these types of observations before making assumptions or jumping to conclusions or just making decisions. However, they still have flaws. Period. A lot, if not everything, has its flaws. Like human nature, not human nature, that's pretty obvious, but nature itself has flaws and it evolutionizes constantly through its flaws and understanding its coding. That is a whole different topic. But the thing is just because you see one person saying all these things about these creatures. I know you didn't think this video was going to go this way, but it is. I'm sorry. We have to just at least observe the most basic observations of witchcraft. We do. We'll get through it together, I promise. But like, when you consider witchcraft and what it actually is, it's built on the foundation of protecting Earth and protecting the nature of Earth and what we do as far as being connected. Like a lot of like elder witches, especially, and not modern witches, because I love you, I really do. Don't get me wrong. But like picking up a witchcraft book from Barnes and Nobles and then drinking your salted caramel latte with almond milk, that doesn't make you a witch. I ain't condemning you either way. You do you, boo. You do whatever you have to. But it's actually making real observations about the world and nature around us and using your best ability to have pure intentions to create a safe place for humanity and nature to evolutionize. And I think that is the most core foundation for any witch possible. Like, you can be an evil witch. I just really don't think there's many as people think there are. Like, I don't and I know there are witches who are Satanists, but I don't follow any religion. I've studied Satanism. This is when you condemn me and don't click on this channel anymore. But like, it's not about religion. It's not about belief systems, and it's not always about values. It's a lot of it has to do with grounding yourself in nature, understanding the flaws of humanity, and utilizing those wisdoms, those teachings that we've brought to ourselves and carried with us for centuries. And I'm talking about like the most basic core foundation of nature, which is herbalism, yo. I have a whole book on herbalism. Not a whole book. Okay, I need another book. But I have a basic book of herbalism and like the different things that you can utilize that grow as weeds in your yard and you can use them as medicine and get drunk off of these things, yo. Like, why would you not want to study this form of science? I don't know. I really don't. You're crazy because you utilize all of these tools. Okay, and consider this. Why are we being taught science as a religion and you've never considered it as a religion, but yet you question these corporations and these authorities, yet you're still taking pharmaceutical drugs, you're still taking like mainstream, you're still drinking mainstream sodas and all this stuff, and you're just, and I ain't shaming you, I ain't blaming you. I'm just saying, like, you need to consider nature and why it was brought to us in the way that it was, and why all of these natural remedies have so much more healing value than like pharmaceutical drugs. Like, a lot of those drugs have like side effects. They have all these different things that just like accumulate over time, even. And then these corporations and these doctors and these pharmaceutical companies, you signed a paper so they don't get any backlash for any of the things that happen to you after taking them. Yet there's all this stuff in nature and it doesn't have the same side effects. Yeah, some of them do. Please do your research. Don't just take a weed and start chewing on it, please, for the love of God. You might kill yourself. But, like, there's so many things in nature that you can take and just be remedied back into your natural health. I personally, I have some ibuprofen in my cabinet, and I have not taken an ibuprofen tablet in years. If I have a headache, I'm gonna drink a bunch of water because usually it's from me being hungover from drinking too much party wine. But it's that's my dog. There's so many things that you can utilize in nature, and this is the core foundation is utilizing the wisdom and the natural tools around you and bringing them into your life as a way of living. And I think that is the most beautiful and respectful thing you can do for mankind and nature and restore its value. Yeah, there's some other things that to consider with witchcraft. Obviously, we're gonna get into black magic eventually. Hold your horses. It's not gonna be this video either, but we will get there. What are you doing, Quinn? My dog's doing something with the carpet. Anyway, so it's just very important to make these types of observations. I'm gonna keep saying this because I just want you to make the comparison. And this is, I promise you, I know I hit you with one today. I really do. I know I did. But it isn't an anti-vax video. It's not even an anti-corporation or an anarchist video. Although I usually do make that sort of content. I'm not gonna lie. It's just, take these things into consideration. Do your own research because you have Google. Use something other than Google too because a lot of that research is biased. Condensed Google ain't the Google it used to be. And just can't come up with your own conclusion. Be your own scientist. Maybe you don't feel like capable of doing that type of scientific observation, but you can utilize tools around you and you can come up with your own conclusions. Maybe don't base your entire life off of your own conclusions, though that's not good. That's not great life advice. But you should do some research, consider some facts, and consider that people might have hidden agendas. And that is the moral and basis of today's video was hidden agendas in witchcraft. Be careful, my boys. There are some witches with some hidden agendas and they probably just want to have sex with you. But be careful out there, okay? I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope we stayed at least on topic as possible. I am going to get way deeper into witchcraft. I'm going to do a lot more studying on the Salem witch trials. I think we'll dive into that first just because Halloween's coming up. I know it's only July, or no, it's August now. There you go. So Halloween is coming up and there's a lot of things to cover, and I feel like Salem is probably just more relatable for a lot of people who have a basic understanding of witchcraft because that's actually historically true and there's a lot of more information available about it than most other witchcraft observations. I believe I said that right. But yeah, so we'll dive into like all the different types of witches, what is actually considered a witch. That'll be one topic. Different spells, forms of spells, why they're compared to alchemy, what the real difference really even is, and also ancient historical things that were probably actually not, you can't really even consider them historical because there's not a whole lot of information about that. So we're gonna have to dive really deep for some like this Anunnaki stuff, the Egyptian stuff, and we're gonna have to make our own conclusions based off of observations. So I just want you to think about those things, maybe do your own research before we get into those topics. And if you have like any like information you want to present to me, or you have anything that you want me to cover as far as topics, leave it down in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and you have a blessed day. Stay black on a Wednesday.